She's not checking your bank account. She's not counting the wrinkles by your eyes or doing math on the calendar. Right now, if there's a woman in your life who's younger or even your own age but drawn to something older in the way you carry yourself, she's running two silent questions through her mind. Not about your money, not about your car. Two questions that decide, in about 4 seconds of conversation, whether you're a man worth staying close to or just another guy who talks a good game. Most men never find out what those questions are. They spend years guessing, buying things, saying the right words, performing confidence they don't feel, while the real test happens somewhere she'll never say out loud. What if I told you both questions have almost nothing to do with your age at all? If you're watching this, there's a good chance you already sense it. Maybe there's a woman, younger, or just someone who's told you she's drawn to older energy, and you can feel that she's watching you closer than she watches other men. But you can't quite name what she's watching for. That uncertainty is exhausting. You replay conversations. You wonder if you said too much, or not enough. You wonder if the age gap is a problem for her, when the truth is, age was never really the variable she cared about. Here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. Women who are genuinely attracted to older men are not attracted to the number on a birth certificate. They're attracted to a state, a way of existing in the world that younger men, still figuring themselves out, usually haven't reached yet. And she tests for that state, always, using two internal questions. Ask any woman honestly, and she likely couldn't even tell you she's doing it. It happens beneath conscious thought, wired into how female attraction has worked for longer than either of us has been alive. Tonight, I'm going to hand you both questions in plain language, not vague theory, the exact internal criteria she's running when she watches how you handle a delayed text, a disagreement, a room full of people who don't know your name. And I'm going to show you something most relationship content won't. These questions can be failed by a 50-year-old man and passed by a 28-year-old man. Age is the excuse people give when they can't name the real thing. We're naming the real thing tonight. Before we get into what those two questions actually are, I want to plant something in your mind because you're going to need it later. First, there is a specific moment, usually within the first 3 interactions, where she decides which question matters more to her. Most men never even notice this moment happening, and by the time they do, the decision's already made. Second, one of these questions is almost impossible to fake, and men who try to fake it usually make themselves less attractive in the process, not more. I'll show you exactly why in a few minutes, and I'll show you what to do instead. For now, understand this. What you're about to learn isn't a script. It's not a set of lines to memorize and perform on your next date. It's a lens. A way of seeing yourself the way she already sees you, so you stop guessing and start knowing. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Right now, without this knowledge, you are being evaluated by a standard you can't see. That ends today. Let's get into what people think they know about this, and why almost all of it is wrong. Most men believe the appeal of an older man comes down to resources, stability, a paid-off car, a title at work, the ability to pick up a dinner check without flinching. That's the story men tell each other, because it's simple, and because it lets them believe attraction can be bought or displayed. It can't. Resources might open a door. They have never, in the history of human attraction, kept a woman standing on the other side of it. Here's what's actually happening. Female attraction, especially toward older men, is rooted in something evolutionary psychologists call fitness signaling through composure. In plain English, a woman's nervous system is constantly, unconsciously scanning for one thing. Can this person regulate himself when things get hard? Because if he can't regulate himself, she'll end up regulating him. And a woman who has to manage a man's emotions is not attracted to him. She's parenting him. Those are opposite experiences, and her body knows the difference even when her mind hasn't articulated it yet. So the first question she's silently asking is this: does this man have a life that's already full, or is he looking to me to fill something empty in him? Think about that for a second. Every needy text, every "why haven't you responded?" every time a man reorganizes his week around a woman who hasn't asked him to, all of it answers that question, and it answers it wrong. It tells her, this man's world is thin, and I am being recruited to thicken it. No woman, no matter how much she likes you, wants to be recruited into being your purpose. Older men who do attract women aren't doing anything mystical. They've usually just lived long enough to build an actual life. Friendships, work that matters to them, hobbies, A rhythm to their days that doesn't depend on her replying fast. She can feel the difference between a man standing on solid ground and a man standing on her. One is magnetic, the other is a slow leak on her energy. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about. That's only half the test. The second question is quieter, and in many ways harder to pass. Can I be soft around this man, or do I have to stay guarded because he can't handle my emotions? This is the one that actually separates boys from men, regardless of birth year. A woman who feels emotionally attracted to someone older is often, underneath it, exhausted. Exhausted from managing men who get defensive at feedback. Exhausted from men who go cold when she's upset instead of staying present. Exhausted from walking on eggshells around a fragile ego dressed up as confidence. Picture this scenario, because I guarantee some version of it has already happened to you. She tells you something honest. Maybe she's frustrated, maybe she disagrees with a decision you made. A younger, less regulated man hears that as an attack. He gets defensive, or he sulks, or he goes quiet and punishing. In that exact moment, without saying a single word about it, she has her answer to question 2. She now knows, I cannot bring my full self here, I have to manage him. But a man who can hear that same honesty, stay grounded, maybe even get curious about it instead of threatened by it, he just passed the hardest test in attraction psychology. Psychologists call this affect regulation under relational stress, and it's one of the single strongest predictors of long-term attraction in every study on the subject. Not looks, not income. Regulation. Here's your micro cliffhanger, because I want this to sit with you. The two questions work together, and most men who fail at only one of them, which means they get close. They feel the spark building, and then it disappears for reasons they never understand. In the next section, I'm going to show you exactly how to build a real answer to both questions. Not a performance of one, but the actual internal shift that makes both of them true about you. Let's turn this into something you can actually use, starting today. Step 1. Build a life that doesn't need her permission to feel full. The action here is concrete. Look at your week honestly. If she vanished for 5 days with no explanation, would your life still have shape? Would you still train, still see the friends you already have, still be moving towards something that has nothing to do with her? If the honest answer is no, that's your starting point. The psychology behind this is simple but powerful. Humans are drawn toward energy, not vacancy. A full life radiates a kind of gravity, an empty one radiates need, and need repels the exact thing it's chasing. This isn't about pretending to be busy or performing indifference. Women can smell performed indifference from a mile away, and it reads as manipulation, not maturity. The most common mistake here is men swinging too far the other direction, using having a life as an excuse to be cold or unavailable, thinking distance itself is the attractive part. It isn't. Distance without warmth just reads as disinterest. The goal isn't to be hard to reach, it's to be whole when you are reached. Step 2. Practice staying regulated when she's not okay. The action. The next time she brings you something uncomfortable, a complaint, a boundary, disappointment, your job is not to fix it immediately, and not to defend yourself immediately. Your job is to stay in the room, emotionally. Breathe. Let her finish. Reflect back what you heard before you respond. Why this works on a psychological level. It directly answers question 2. Every time you stay steady while she's not, you're proving, through action rather than words, that she can bring her real self to you without triggering a crisis. That's not weakness. That is, biologically and psychologically, one of the rarest and most magnetic traits a man can offer. The common mistake: men who confuse staying regulated with staying silent or agreeing with everything. That's not regulation, that's collapse, and women read collapse as another form of instability, just a quieter one. Regulation means you can hold your own position calmly while still hearing hers completely. Both at once. Step 3. Let your interest show without letting it lead. Here's where a lot of good men sabotage themselves. They finally build the full life, they finally get their emotional footing steady, and then, the moment she shows interest back, they abandon both, texting constantly, restructuring plans around her, becoming available at a moment's notice. The action. Keep doing the things that made you attractive in the first place, even after she's clearly interested. Respond with warmth, but on your own rhythm. Make plans, but don't rearrange your foundation to chase her attention. The psychology. Attraction isn't a finish line you cross once, it's a pattern she's continuously reading. The moment the pattern shifts from full man, with room for her, to man whose world now revolves around her, question 1 gets a new answer, and it's the wrong one. The common mistake. Mistaking consistency for repetition. Being consistent means she can count on your character. It does not mean being endlessly, immediately available every time she reaches out. There's a difference between reliable and reachable at all hours, and conflating the two is where a lot of this goes wrong. Step 4. Let silence do work you're tempted to do with words. This is the step almost nobody wants to hear, because it feels passive. It isn't. The action. When you're unsure where you stand, resist the urge to over-explain, over-text, or seek reassurance. Let a little space exist. Let her feel your absence the way she felt your presence. Why it works. Reassurance seeking, even disguised as charm, signals exactly the neediness we talked about in question 1. Silence, used correctly, not as punishment but as steadiness, signals the opposite. It says I'm okay either way, because my life doesn't depend on this outcome. That single signal does more relational work than 100 well-crafted messages. The common mistake. Using silence as a manipulation tactic, a game to make her chase. She will feel that difference instantly, because manipulation has an edge to it, and grounded silence doesn't. One comes from strategy, the other comes from actual internal stability. Only one of them is attractive. I know what it's like at 3 a.m, phone face up on the nightstand, replaying a conversation for the 9th time, trying to figure out if you said the right thing, if you should text again, if the silence means something is wrong, or if it means nothing at all. That anxiety is real. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. And I'm not going to tell you to just relax, like that phrase has ever calmed a single overthinking mind in the history of the world. Here's what I want you to actually understand about that discomfort. It is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's the exact feeling that shows up whenever a man is in the process of becoming someone more solid than he was before. Every version of you that used to chase, that used to over-explain, that used to abandon his own peace to secure someone else's approval, that version doesn't leave quietly. It shows up at 3 a.m., asking you to go back to old patterns because they're familiar, even though familiar was never the same thing as good for you. The 2 questions we talked about tonight, whether your life is full and whether you can stay steady when things get hard, they're not really about her. They were never really about her. They're about the kind of man you're building yourself into, with or without her attention as the reward. That reframe changes everything, because it means the work you're doing right now, the discipline, the self-regulation, the refusal to chase, none of it is wasted, even if this particular situation doesn't go the way you hope. Here's the mindset shift I want to leave you with. Silence isn't the absence of effort. Silence, held with intention, is one of the most disciplined things a man can practice, because it requires you to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into it. Anyone can perform confidence when things are going well. The real test, the one both of her questions are actually measuring, is who you are when you don't know the outcome yet. A man who can stay grounded in not knowing is telling every woman who ever meets him something true about his character, long before he says a single word. So if you're in the waiting right now, waiting to see if she texts back, waiting to see if this thing between you turns into something real, waiting to feel like you finally have your footing, understand that the waiting itself is doing something. It's not empty time. It's the exact process building the composure that made you magnetic to begin with. You don't get to skip that part. Nobody does. And if it doesn't work out with her, if this particular woman was never the one meant to stay, the man you're becoming through this process doesn't disappear with her. He stays. He shows up in the next room, the next conversation, the next chance, already steady, already whole, already someone who doesn't need to ask permission to take up space in his own life. That's not consolation. That's the actual prize, and most men chase the wrong one for years before they realize it. You didn't come this far to fold now. Stay full. Stay steady. Let the 2 questions answer themselves through who you already are. If this hit something real in you, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this coming, and I don't want you to miss it. And tell me in the comments, which of the 2 questions do you think you're failing right now? Be honest with yourself down there. That honesty is the first step of everything we just talked about.